Everyone needs to be careful.
Fermented
Watch out
crab
for
apples.
mushrooms and frogs, too. Well, there's a long story there. Exactly. All right. Thank you, Tucker. And all right, my opening monologue in just a moment. But first. All right, this is a Fox News alert. The migrant caravan continues to move north through Mexico towards our southern border. Trace Gallagher joins us from our West Coast newsroom tonight with the very latest. Trace.
Sean, hundreds of Central American migrants, maybe more than 1,000, can now see U.S. soil, but they remain in Mexico at the Tijuana border. Many said they expected to see an army waiting on the U.S. side, but instead were being surveilled by Border Patrol agents and helicopters, while U.S. contractors use barbed wire to reinforce the existing fence. So far, the only conflict was a fight between some migrants and local Mexicans telling them to go home, but it appears they will be here for a while. The asylum application process at the Tijuana border is already 6 weeks, and that's just initial interviews. Nobody's sure how long the wait time will become when the caravan of 4,000 to 5,000 arrives late next week. Even U.S. social workers who came to Tijuana to help say the migrants got bad advice to come north. Watch.
Inform them. Somebody has to let them know, hey, it's not going to be easy, because it's not.
Yeah, we know there are members of immigration advocacy groups embedded with the caravans coaching migrants, which is likely why many have turned down offers of jobs and asylum in Mexico, hoping instead to go to California to take advantage of sanctuary laws. Though we should note more than a dozen members of the caravan were arrested late last night after sneaking across the border into the mountains near San Diego. Sean.
All right, Trace Gallagher in our West Coast newsroom tonight. Thank you. It is a big breaking news night. We have a lot to cover. You just saw the report. The crisis at our southern border is escalating tonight as we speak. Now, coming up, we're going to show you horrific new video illustrating just why it is so important to secure our southern border. And meanwhile, a Democratic presidential hopeful just compared ICE to the KKK. And tonight we'll have the very latest developments surrounding Michael Hannity, who's facing felony domestic abuse charges. We will point out the left's glaring due process double standard in this country. And we have new developments from the Mueller witch hunt. There will be no more recounts, by the way, in Florida's gubernatorial election. Republican Ron DeSantis is now officially the governor-elect. Buckle up. Time for our breaking news opening monologue. All right, the crisis at our southern border is growing more serious every day. In Arizona, over 650 illegal immigrants crossing the border were just detained in just the last 48 hours. And according to our own William LaJeunesse, a dozen members of the caravan were arrested Wednesday night near San Diego for crossing the border illegally. Remember, only the first few hundred migrants have arrived. We're expecting a couple of thousand in just the next few days, and then many more after that. Let me be clear. I have said I really believe the vast majority of people in this caravan are probably people that are poor. They have good intentions. They're looking for a life for themselves, their family, a good job, a better future. And there is for us a massive security risk. Now, criminals also will take advantage of unchecked, unvetted migration into our country. We see it every day. Look at what happened in Arkansas on Sunday. A 29-year-old illegal immigrant opening fire on officers during a traffic stop outside of Fayetteville. We have the dash cam footage, but be warned, this video is disturbing.
Shots fired, kid! Kenny, I need units now.
This is why we talk about vetting people before they come into the country. Thankfully, no officers were injured. The perpetrator was taken into custody. But this act of violence is unacceptable, and the very reason secure borders, a strong system of vetting are vitally important. When I sat through a security briefing in Texas with Rick Perry, 642,000 crimes they had documented in a 7-year period of time. Some not serious, but some very serious, going up to murder. That's in one state. And while most Americans support common sense border security measures, far left Democrats are continuing to demonize those who are just trying to protect us and enforce our laws. Take, for example, California Senator Kamala Harris, who just today literally compared ICE to the KKK in the sense that, well, don't you think that there's a perception problem that ICE seems like the KKK? Well, speaking with the nominee to lead that agency, watch this.
The Klan was what we would call today a domestic terrorist group.
Why? Why would we call them domestic terrorist group?
Because they tried to use fear and force to change political environment.
And what was the motivation for the use of fear and
It
force?
was based on race and ethnicity.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that
protecting
there's a
people's rights.
perception?
I see no
Are you aware that there's a
that
perception?
puts ICE in the same category as the KKK. Is that what you're asking me?
That senator wants to be your next president. Now, what you just saw is beyond despicable. Now, to be that patronizing, frankly, idiotic, utterly disrespectful to men and women in law enforcement that put their lives on the line for us every single solitary day is shameful. How many border agents have been injured or killed performing their daily work? It's exactly what I've been warning you about. This is the most radical crop of Democrats to ever come to Washington. Instead of respecting our laws, our sovereignty, our Constitution, they push for open borders, sanctuary cities and states, and without a doubt, they're saying they want to abolish ICE, the very organization responsible for enforcing our system of immigration laws. They don't care how much it costs, what danger it poses to you, the American people. They want wide open borders. And tonight, Kamala Harris might have one less challenger in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary. Yesterday, fame-seeking anti-Trump attorney Michael Avenatti, he was arrested on charges of felony domestic violence. Now, these are very serious charges. But unlike him and many others that were so willing to rush to judgment and never afforded Justice Kavanaugh due process, the presumption of innocence, we on this show are consistent. Every American deserves due process. Every American deserves that presumption of innocence. Yes, even if you don't agree with them politically, someone like Michael Avenatti, he deserves it. You deserve it. Everybody deserves it. And guess what? Judge Kavanaugh deserved it and didn't get it. Now, the rush to judgment, this is a dangerous thing in this country. Remember Richard Jewell, falsely accused of being the lone bomber in the Olympic Park bombing in '96. He fit the profile of the lone bomber because he lived with his mother. I didn't know at the time. He was listening to my radio show, and I was saying, that makes no sense. It turned out he was a hero. He wasn't the bomber. I found out later, he told me I was the only one. He was listening to the show that stood up for him and at least gave him a fair shot, the presumption of innocence. By the way, you might remember the Duke lacrosse team. They were falsely smeared. On our show, we didn't rush to judgment, and I took the time to go and meet with some of the kids and their families to do some investigative work. And let's not forget what the left did in Ferguson. Police officer Darren Wilson was never charged in that case. His career was ruined anyway. Remember what happened in Baltimore? Everyone rushed to judgment. All those officers were guilty of what happened with Freddie Gray. None of them convicted. How many times did the president at the time, Obama, rush to judgment? The Cambridge police acting stupidly. During every big moment, so many people on the left, if it fits their political agenda, if it's politically expedient, if they can get cheap political points, they rush to judgment just for political gain. No presumption of innocence ever with these people when it comes to politics. So yes, Michael Avenatti deserves due process. He deserves the presumption of innocence, even though it wasn't that long ago, he did not extend that basic decency to Justice Kavanaugh. Frankly, just the opposite. Remember, it was he that pushed a phony claim from a client named Julie Swetnick Remember, they came out with that affidavit. And at the time, by the way, Alan Dershowitz said he might have to rescind this because the story started to change. And she was alleging that when Brett Kavanaugh was in high school, he participated in numerous parties, gang rape parties, where girls' drinks were systematically drugged, boys lining up in the hallways, waiting their turn to gang rape their teenage victims. And she claimed it happened many times. These claims were given to the Senate Judiciary Committee in a sworn statement. None of those claims, none of them were ever corroborated. No evidence was ever presented. Swetnick later backtracked during an interview with NBC. Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley recently referred Avenatti and Swetnick now to the Department of Justice for a criminal probe into their false statements. It is clear that Avenatti, he wanted to derail Judge Kavanaugh's life over these absurd claims. He should have gotten this full story. And how does his own client contradict what he said in an affidavit? He didn't give a rip about due process, presumption of innocence. And now this issue has come full circle for him. Take a look.
I have never struck a woman. I never will strike a woman.
I've never sexually assaulted anyone. Not in high school, not in college, not ever.
I am looking forward to a full investigation, at which point I am confident that I will be fully exonerated.
I know that any kind of investigation, Senate, FBI, Montgomery County Police, whatever, will clear me.
Now, in this country, these protections, due process, should never, ever, ever be a partisan political issue. It's not Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal. It must be applied to every American equally. Sadly, Avenatti wasn't the only person on the left with no forethought, no principles. And just a short time ago, so many Democrats, so many in the mainstream media, they were willing to throw out fundamental, basic rights right out the window because of an unyielding partisan hatred for Judge Kavanaugh. Remember this.
This is a monumental defining moment this week when you have someone like Cosby going to prison and then in the same breath having Kavanaugh possibly going to the highest court in the land.
I am blown away. Before I saw this stuff, I'm like, oh, come on, what could be in this guy's yearbook? Like, little nonsense. This is sick stuff.
Right.
The Devil's Triangle in your yearbook forever and ever.
These people in Congress right now in that Senate Judiciary Committee, these white men, old, by the way, are not protecting women. They're protecting a man who is probably guilty.
Not only do women like Dr. Ford, who bravely comes forward, need to be heard, but they need to be believed. They need to be believed. I just want to say to the men of this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing.
Let me just say right at the outset, I believe Dr. Ford, I believe the survivor here.
I believe her. I stand with her. And
do you hope she shows up on Monday? Do you hope that she testifies?
I don't think she should be bullied into this scenario where it's a he said, she said. It's a sham hearing. And I don't think she should participate in it.
It's definitely attempted rape. I don't see it any other way.
Remember, the charges against Judge Kavanaugh were from 36 years ago. Where is the outrage? Those people you just watched over somebody they politically agree with, Michael Avenatti, are they so willing to suspend these fundamental rights when it comes to claims made against him? Why? Because he's a Democrat? Or his name is not Keith Ellison? Another example? There are not charges from 36 years ago. By July of this year, when he was spewing nonstop anti-Trump vitriol, well, guess what? Michael Avenatti appeared on cable news over 200 times. According to analysis from the Washington Free Beacon, fake news CNN, conspiracy TV MSNBC gave Avenatti $175 million worth of free media coverage. Why did he become the star guest? Because he was trashing Donald Trump and Michael Cohen. Now what do we hear about him? Crickets. Now, Newsbusters reports tonight that CNN barely covered the Avenatti arrest. MSNBC also tried to ignore and play down the story. That is in stark contrast to their wall-to-wall coverage of the Swetnick allegations with no evidence of regular gang rapes and drugging of teenage girls when Kavanaugh was in high school. All right, important issue. This is about the rule of law, equal application of the law. Let's not politicize political differences or criminalize differences like this. This is now becoming madness. Now let's turn to the latest out of Mueller's partisan witch hunt. Earlier today, President Trump, he was sounding off, reminding we, the people, the American people, that there's been no finding of collusion. He also highlighted how much money and time this endless investigation is costing you, the American taxpayer. And the president went on to tweet, quote, universities will someday study what highly conflicted and not Senate-approved Bob Mueller and his gang of Democratic thugs have done to destroy people. Why is he protecting crooked Hillary, Comey, McCabe, Page, and her lover, Peter Strzok, and all of his friends on the other side? They have spent months digging into everything and anyone and everyone associated with President Trump while ignoring what we now know to be factual and true. That is collusion, real crimes committed by Hillary Clinton, violating the Espionage Act. Fact, the biggest, easiest slam dunk case as it relates to, obstruction of justice we've ever seen. Why has there been no Mueller investigation into Hillary's bought and paid for dirty Russian dossier, put together by a foreign spy, Russian intelligence sources, paid for by Hillary and the DNC that she was controlling? Why? In order to, in part, influence an election. You, the American people, how is that not Russian collusion? What about the dissemination of the Russian intelligence throughout the highest levels of your government? Those Russian lies spread out to the American people before the 2016 election to propagandize and influence people before they voted in that election and use then to destroy President Trump after the election. What about the fraud on a FISA court 4 times? Grassley, Graham, Nunes memos, the bulk of information in those FISA warrants used the same unverified, uncorroborated dossier that Steele, under oath himself, testified he had no idea if was true. This is all being ignored. Why? Because this partisan witch hunt has never really been about Russia collusion. It has been about delegitimize President Trump, started by a guy that says, he should lose 100 million to 0 in the election. The guy that exonerated Hillary and was writing an exoneration before investigation. Show me the man, I'll find you the crime. And finally tonight, we do turn to good and bad news out of Florida. First, the good news. There will be no more recounts in the gubernatorial election, barring any last-minute legal attempts to maybe steal the election. Have to always assume that's a possibility. Republican Ron DeSantis is now certified. He will be the next governor of the great state of Florida. Gillum, of course, has not conceded, even though he only picked up, get this, 1 vote in the recount. 1 vote. And my sources tell me tonight that, in fact, Rick Scott has picked up a lot of votes in the recount. In the Senate race, the chaos continues. After a machine recount, well, Rick Scott remains way ahead, having picked up, in fact, some votes. Palm Beach County, once again, failed to meet the statutory deadline, so the original results in that county stand. But a hand count of thousands of contested or faulty ballots, those with over votes, that means that if at the top of the ticket, you're supposed to fill in the oval and there's a dot down there, you can bet that Nelson's attorney will say, you see that dot at the bottom? They meant to put it up here. That's going to be going on. The madness continues. Democratic attorneys are now pulling out all the stops to try and make up ground, which will be impossible. Following a suit, a Florida judge ruled earlier that throwing out ballots with mismatched signatures was unconstitutional. Now, this is what this means. Any liberal judge can change the law. That means ballots can change up to 11 days after the election. That is insane. In other words, he changed Florida state law from the bench, also extending the deadline for so-called curing contested ballots to Saturday, bringing about 4,000 votes into play, which means the 13,000 plus vote lead that, in fact, Rick Scott has will stand. By the way, the same judge, Fox News has learned today, whose wife, Karen Walker, donated, to Senator Bill Nelson. Shouldn't he have recused himself? All right, we're going to continue to track the results out of Florida, as November 20th is now the deadline to certify the election results. But you can anticipate, I'm sure, more and more and more court challenges. All right, a lot of breaking news on the caravan, Avenatti, so much more. The latest out of Florida Geraldo and Herman Cain join us next for a debate about the crisis on our southern border. Later tonight, Piers Morgan, who knows the president well, a critic and a fan. He'll tell us why. Straight ahead. California Senator Kamala Harris, considered a top contender supposedly for the 2020 Democratic nomination for president, making huge waves today, suggesting that ICE, the perception of ICE, was the same perception as the Ku Klux Klan. You can't make this up. Take a look.
The Klan was what we would call today a domestic terrorist group.
Why? Why would we call them domestic terrorist group?
Because they tried to use fear and force to change political environment.
And what was the motivation for the use of fear and force?
It was based on race and ethnicity.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between sworn
I'm talking about perception.
Officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel.
All right, here now with Reaction America Fighting Back, Chairman Herman Cain, Fox News correspondent at large, Geraldo Rivera, is with us. I'm going to start with you, Geraldo. I will concede, as the first wave, 80 people. We're expecting, I think, about 900, 1,000 tomorrow, and then many more following. Let's concede 99%. They want a better life. They're told they're going to get into America. That's why they're a part of it. But we have had our own Department of Homeland Security and Mexican officials confirm that criminals are integrating into that migrant population moving here. That is a danger to every American. And we see what they're doing with the fence. They've blocked it. This was on the Mexican border. Knocked the fence down, and they rushed across the border. This is the point. We cannot have this here. You agree with me, a border wall, but at some point, how is it possible that we had a party during the Obama years, the Democratic Party, sounding like Donald Trump today, and now they're comparing it to our brave law enforcement to the Klan, or there's a perception they're like the Klan?
Let me start there, Sean, if I may, where we agree. Shame on Senator Harris, someone with great experience and obvious intellect, for her to be so intellectually lazy as to stoop to a comparison between our hardworking law enforcement, however you agree or disagree with their mission, and comparing them to a violent, racist, terrorist organization. I mean, she knows better, and she really owes every one of those ICE agents an apology. And sooner rather than later,
border agents get killed down there. Border agents risk their lives.
They absolutely do. And what she said was beyond the pale. It's like one of my pet peeves is when people say, "Oh, he's a Nazi, he's a KKK." It insults all the real victims of racist terrorism in the case of the KKK, and all the people, the genocidal victims of the Nazis, the industrialized power that sought to wipe out people. So I think that our elected officials have to leave those comparisons aside. Now, dealing with the issue. And I sensed it in your voice in a way that I haven't in a while, Sean. There was real sympathy for the vast majority of those pathetic, poor, striving people who only want to pick fruit or vegetables or mow lawns or babysit or wash dishes. That's all they want to do. And I think that the real dilemma, and I'm sure that you'll ask Herman Cain about this, the real dilemma is I don't think either party right now is either equipped to or has any inclination to resolve this issue. I think that both parties have dug in, that there's not going to be a wall because the Democrats won't agree with it.
You acknowledge
there's not going to be the Dreamer
offered a deal. The wall for the Dreamers.
I know that. I know that. I know that. And you and I have both endorsed that deal. But I don't think that we're ever going to get there. Not in the lame duck session. It won't happen. Now you're going to have a divided Congress. Herman. You're going to have this issue around for a while.
Herman, we are a nation of laws. We're a nation that has sovereignty and borders, and we've got to protect it. The worst scenario I think that could unfold here is that thousands make it to our border, and the scene we saw in southern Mexico unfold here. I don't want anybody getting hurt. I don't want any confrontation. Wouldn't be good for anybody. If we had a wall with a door and you can come in legally, we wouldn't have any of these problems.
The rare instance where Geraldo and I agree.
Well, that ruins my show.
We agree that the parallel that Kamala Harris tried to draw is absolutely despicable. There is no comparison between people trying to enter this country illegally and the KKK. So Geraldo and I agree. Here's where we don't agree. The Republicans have tried to craft a solution to prevent this problem. They tried to put forth a solution while the Democrats were in control of the House and the White House and the Congress. But it was the Democrats who do not want a solution. The Republicans want a solution. One other quick thing. ICE is not in the business of fighting perception. They are in the business of dealing with reality. And the reality is our southern border is on the verge of an invasion. And that's what they are trying to fight. It has nothing to do with perception. And for Kamala Harris to talk about this is perception, she's absolutely wrong, number one. And number two, perception has nothing to do with the reality that they are trying to illegally invade our country. I respect the fact that they are trying to leave a situation where they can get a better life. But you can't get a better life by coming into this country and breaking the laws as you try to enter.
Geraldo.
I just think, Herman, with all due respect, and you know I respect you highly, I think that you can't use language like invade at the same time speaking sympathetically about this pathetic group. These are not MS-13. Come on, we have to look and see who they are. These are the people that want to pick the apricots. They want to pick the avocado. They want to mow your lawn. They want to wash the dishes, and they want to deliver the pizzas. We have 7 million jobs. They know the jobs are just there for the asking. We have fruits and vegetables dying on the vine because there aren't enough workers to do it. They see that there's jobs available. If they could just get into the United States, and we say, wait a second, you can't come in because we need process, we need procedure. And they say, but I'm hungry. I think that it's a damnable, difficult situation. I'm not blaming anybody, but I think that the parties, they have to put aside their parochial differences, and where I disagree with Herman is, if you think the Republicans are all good and the Democrats are all bad, then I think
I don't want to jump in the debate. It'll be 2-on-1, which I like, actually, when it's two liberals against me. Last word, Herman Cain.
Here's the deal. Here's the situation. It only takes one MS-13 gangster to kill an American. That's one too many. That's my point. So I understand their plight, but I do not agree with the illegality of their plight. That's where most Americans are.
I'll bring back when I sat through the security briefing. 642,000 crimes. Law enforcement presented a huge presentation. I was there with Rick Perry. I've been to the border, 10, 11, 12 times. And I've seen it all up front, up close and personal. All right, thank you both. Geraldo, Herman Cain. When we come back, more hypocrisy on the left. They didn't believe in due process, the presumption of innocence for Judge Kavanaugh. Oh, you won't believe, by the way, how some now have reacted to what happened in terms of the attorney Michael Avenatti. Also, Ari Fleischer, Monica Crowley will be here to respond in an exclusive interview. Piers Morgan, he had to borrow my shirt to be on the show. I'll explain. Last night, Michael Hannity was arrested on suspicion of domestic abuse charges. It didn't take long for Hollywood liberals like Alyssa Milano to disavow him. And the View co-hosts, well, today suddenly are fans of due process. Where did all this come from?
It was very upsetting to hear this, very disappointing. If it proves to be true, I will disavow him. I think he should take a polygraph test. Just to clear the air. I think that would help him. and then we'll see what happens.
What drives me crazy is the hypocrisy in these moments when it's who you like that you want to believe. And I think if you believe in due process with Kavanaugh, you should also believe in due process with Michael Avenatti.
We don't know a lot. We don't know who the alleged victim is. But if true, I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed. And I agree with you. We would have to disavow him.
Media has such a different tone, especially compared to the way they treated Brett Kavanaugh. Joining us now, Washington Times columnist Monica Crowley, former White House press secretary Ari Fleischer. Ari, I'm not a registered Republican. I'm a registered conservative. Republicans screw things up a lot. They really do. And one of the things I gave them credit for, they handled the Kavanaugh case with the seriousness it deserved. I think they did it right. And they had the hearings. They went through the evidence. Now we have a point where Avenatti, Julie Swetnick, they're now being investigated. I believe in the presumption of innocence and due process. Avenatti did not. Now you see the media tone change. Reaction.
Look, number one, I take no joy in this. Anytime somebody is arrested and might go to prison, nobody should celebrate this.
I agree.
But due process and you're innocent until proven guilty can never be slogans in America. They must be real. They must be the way our justice system is built on and that we all respect. Michael Avenatti had no respect for either, for innocent until proven guilty or due process. And that's what he tried to do to Brett Kavanaugh. Now it's come full circle, and now he has to deal with it. He's lucky that because of people like Brett Kavanaugh who believe in the Constitution, he will have his due process and his day in court.
The one report in TMZ that could be problematic if that turns out to be true is apparently when he ran in, and this is the day after, and the word "she hit me first." If that came out and that's true, Monica, that's problematic. In my mind, that would be problematic for anybody.
Is that his defense? Well, she hit me first. I mean, it's not.
Well, no,
not
he says he didn't do any of it. To be fair to him,
right? Look, all of these Hollywood liberals and others who embrace Michael Avenatti as some sort of hero of the resistance, they're all learning right now that you live by the Avenatti and you die by the Avenatti. Okay, he will have his say. He will have his day in court. He will have his own legal representation as he's entitled to. It's very ironic that he was first in line trying to deny that to Brett Kavanaugh. And by the way, President Trump as well with his representation of Stormy Daniels. A lot of these women who just blindly embrace this guy without looking into his background. I mean, he's going through a very messy divorce. His ex-wife had a sworn statement in those proceedings where she claimed that he emotionally abused her. So there may or may not be a pattern of behavior here with Mr. Avenatti. But the fact that the left just blindly raced to embrace him only because he opposed President Trump and was trying to lead the charge to take on cases to try to destroy him is despicable.
On MSNBC and CNN, 108 and 200 total, or whatever the number is, but on those two channels in particular, over 100. What about, Ari, when these issues come up, they don't know any of the facts, they know an allegation's been made, no corroboration, and then when you get deeper into it, like in the case of Professor Ford, it finds out she identified an eyewitness to the incident who said it didn't happen. In that case, Swetnick's allegation was so over the top from the get-go, and then she changed her story. But when people say, "I believe her," without knowing anything about the case, what does that mean? Because that happens a lot now. I believe women have a right to be believed. I think when serious allegations are made, we need to take them seriously.
And the women who made the allegations against Bill Clinton are still largely not believed by those on the left. Look, it's a terrible hypocrisy. If the person is a woman who is attacking or saying that a Republican did something wrong and immoral, the entire left says women are made to should be believed right from the start. No investigation necessary. I believe. Yet now they're all pausing. It should be one constant standard. It should be the Republican standard. It should be the due process standard. It should be the innocent until proven guilty standard for one and for all, regardless of ideology. That's what Brett Kavanaugh proved at his hearings. The left needs to stop this. I believe anybody if they attack Republicans. Let's just have due process.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be political. These issues are too serious. These charges are too serious. The issue is too serious. Nobody wants anybody that abuses women to get away with it. Nobody, no person with a conscience or a soul. Monica, what about the I believe before we know anything?
Yeah, you know, I think we're starting to see a turning of this. You know, the Me Too movement started out with very noble purpose. It's been weaponized. We saw that with the Kavanaugh hearings. And now I think with the Avenatti case, we might have a tipping back to the idea that justice should be blind and equally applied. I hope so.
All right. Ari, good to see you. And Monica, good to see you. Thank you both.
Thanks.
When we come back, the only reason Piers Morgan is actually going to be on the show, because he borrowed a shirt, he didn't have one, but he takes on Hollywood's unhinged response to the Trump presidency and what he likes about Donald Trump and what he's a critic on. That's next, straight ahead. Right now, Hollywood is continuing to ramp up their vile daily hatred campaign against President Trump. His supporters, for example, this week, insane Robert De Niro, totally unhinged, another vulgar rant. And of course, this behavior has been going on now for 2 years. Take a look.
Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I am outraged. Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president? I want to clarify, I'm not an actor. I lie for a living. However, it's been a while, and maybe it's time.
Today, the world is suffering from the real Donald Trump. Come on, let's go. What are we talking about? Let's clap for that. This idiot is the president. The guy is a fool. Come on. Our government today, with the prompting of our baby in chief, has in chief, I call him.
And yet the president has shattered one economic record after another. Unemployment straight on down the line. Joining us now, he is the editor-at-large at thedailymail.com. Piers Morgan is with us. Piers, by the way, is in the U.S. hosting Daily Mail TV early today and tomorrow. And your show is a massive hit. Your only mistake in TV in the U.S. was lecturing Americans about guns, which I don't want to talk to you about.
We could go a long time on guns, Mr. Hannity, if you want to. But let's not do it tonight.
Not tonight. Did you really? You almost had to borrow my shirt to come on TV tonight.
Well,
is that my gift to you?
my rather large rib steak I had earlier this evening. And then they said, look, why don't you wear one of Sean's? Unfortunately, your shirt was obviously much too big for me.
Probably it's big because I do mixed martial arts 90 minutes a day.
Of course.
Well, it's good to see you. Welcome back. Congrats on your I know you have a huge show and huge success. I love your iconoclastic nature on Twitter, although I got bored with it. Right now, Hollywood is continuing to ramp up their vile daily hatred campaign against President Trump. His supporters, for example, this week, insane Robert De Niro, totally unhinged, another vulgar rant. And of course, this behavior has been going on now for 2 years. Take a look.
Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I am outraged. Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president? I want to clarify, I'm not an actor. I lie for a living. However, it's been a while, and maybe it's time.
Today, the world is suffering from the real Donald Trump. Come on, let's go. What are we talking about? Let's clap for that. This idiot is the president. The guy is a fool. Come on. Our government today, with the prompting of our baby in chief, has in chief, I call him.
And yet the president has shattered one economic record after another. Unemployment straight on down the line. Joining us now, he is the editor-at-large at thedailymail.com. Piers Morgan is with us. Piers, by the way, is in the U.S. hosting Daily Mail TV early today and tomorrow. And your show is a massive hit. Your only mistake in TV in the U.S. was lecturing Americans about guns, which I don't want to talk to you about.
We could go a long time on guns, Mr. Hannity, if you want to. But let's not do it tonight.
Not tonight. Did you really? You almost had to borrow my shirt to come on TV tonight.
Well,
is that my gift to you?
my rather large rib steak I had earlier this evening. And then they said, look, why don't you wear one of Sean's? Unfortunately, your shirt was obviously much too big for me.
Probably it's big because I do mixed martial arts 90 minutes a day.
Of course.
Well, it's good to see you. Welcome back. Congrats on your. I know you have a huge show and huge success. I love your iconoclastic nature on Twitter, although I got bored with it.